This is Forge Daily with Mackenzie Barwell on the Forge Audio Network.
Forge fans, welcome back to another episode of Forge Daily. Today is September 21st, 2023. I'm your host, Mackenzie Barwell, here to give you all things Forge FC. Now we've got just one day standing in between today and Forge FC's matchup with Pacific FC this weekend. Now, if you watched or listened to Behind the Beard this week, you'd know where Coach Bobby stands on the game and the significance of it more generally. Let me remind you, Forge and Pacific both fighting for that second place spot in the standings. And like I've mentioned before, Pacific have clinched a playoff spot, but not necessarily a position on the leaderboard. So even though they've got a point up on Forge going into this game, it doesn't necessarily give them too much of an advantage with these last few games of the season remaining. Also, let's quickly talk about the playoff format, because if you recall, those top two teams will play each other for a direct spot to host the final. And then if you lose, you'll still have another opportunity at redemption and play a second game. So the fourth and fifth place team will play each other. The winner of that game will move on to play the third place team. And then the winner of that game will compete against the team who lost in that initial first and second placed team game. I hope that makes sense, but that just goes to show how much is at stake with the third versus second place spot, because if you go into the playoffs in the third position and you lose your first playoff game, there is no redemption. So that would explain why Coach Bobby and a lot of these players have been looking at these upcoming matches as if they are playoff games. All right, let's take a look at Pacific and how they've been performing as of late, because like I said, coming off that 4-1 victory against York, and after a good start to the season right out the gate, they kind of went through this dry spell about halfway through, losing the lead that they had gained. Now, however, more recently, they've kind of kicked it into high gear, and I want to turn to week 23 of the CPLs Team of the Week because it really highlights this. They've got 4 out of the 11 players, starting with their goalkeeper, Emil Gastov. He had an outstanding week. He also recently just turned 20, so a young player. He stopped a penalty and made 5 saves against Ottawa to help them get that 1-1 tie last week. And then also, of course, just allowing 1 goal in their victory over York United this past weekend. Defender Thomas Mueller-Giguère scored his 4th of the season to give Pacific an 11th minute lead against York on Sunday. He also put in a noteworthy defensive shift against Ottawa midweek last week, making 6 clearances and winning 6 of his 11 battles. Of course, another name that we've heard before, this one is not surprising. Midfielder Sean Young was back to his best this week on both sides of the ball, scoring what ended up being the winning goal against York on Sunday, while winning the ball 9 times, including twice in the final third. And lastly, we've got Stefan Yates, who scored his first professional goal to help Pacific earn that draw against Atletico last week. So that would be all for Pacific, but for Forge FC, we have Benny Badabenga, of course, in the left wing after receiving the man of the match last Sunday against Valor. He recorded 2 chances created, 7 attempted dribbles, and then, of course, burying that free kick as well. As I talked about earlier, we know exactly what has to happen here at Tim Hortons Field on Saturday to put Forge in a position to be successful. I spoke to Malcom Duncan this morning after practice just to get his perspective on what the keys to success might be going into this weekend.
I think just continuing the match form that we're in right now. We've had a few good results over the past few games, so keep doing what we're doing, really. We've been playing well, so just continue that.
Now, you came on midway through the game last Sunday. You had to be ready. Coach Bobby was making some quick substitutions, so how do you stay prepared in those moments and make sure you're ready to be called on at any point, even when it's kind of unpredictable like that?
I think it's just always having the mentality that at any point you could be called on to go in. So just always keeping yourself ready, whether that's mentally and physically. But proper warming up before the game, not just slacking off and just being ready.
Pre and post game meal?
Pre-game? It depends on the time, but I'll usually go to the Deli and grab a sandwich.
Okay.
Post game, I'm not really I usually don't have an appetite after a game. Typically.
Really?
So I usually just drink something like protein shake.
Okay, that's fair. Is it like a recurring thing where you go to the deli and get the same sandwich? Like, are you a local there now?
A deli by my house that I've been going to since middle school. So.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
So you're like friends with the people that like work
Yeah,
there?
they know me. So I usually just go and get the exact same sandwich for the past decade. But yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Malcolm. Good luck.
Thank you.
One other thing I wanted to include in today's episode from the One Nation podcast, Jordan Wilson and his co-host had an interesting conversation. They talked about the battle between Forge and Pacific and how Pacific have been performing as of late. And I thought they summarized it pretty well and made some good points about how Forge played against Valor. So here's what they had to say.
Who is finishing second is the big $1 million question, because Pacific FC showed yesterday against York United their ceiling, how they could play. And if they play like that, that's a team that I could get behind.
If they didn't have that goal-scoring drought, and it was a drought, it was like no rain for 3 years level of dry.
It was dry.
It was incredibly dry, sandpaper almost.
Wow.
But they've broken that, and I think you used a really good word there. They showed what they can be at their best.
I think I have to ask you, though, Jenkins, about a turning point, because we saw Pacific yesterday. We mentioned how great they were, but then we're also talking about Forge, who... a game like that, usually against Valor at IG Field, they definitely tie or they lose. They don't come away with the 3 points. They win 3-2.
I think they deserve a ton of credit for yesterday.
Okay.
It would have been very easy, especially after they went down again in the second half. It would have been really easy for them to go, oh, it's Winnipeg. We hate this turf. We hate coming here. Whatever. Find your excuse. It's not happening today. They dug deep. They found that gear to come back and win it. And what is not surprising, because Bobby Smirniotis is one of, if not the best coach in this league, is how they were able to completely change the way they were playing in the second half.
This is also the time that they heat up. So it could be that case. This next match, we say the biggest match of the season, I've said it, I could see them finishing second, but they have to take care of business this week.
And lastly, if you have not seen the Indigenous-inspired logos, they came out yesterday and they're on the Forge social media. Kyle did a fantastic job, so I would highly recommend going to take a look if you haven't already. That's all I have for today's episode. Thank you all so much for listening, and I hope to see you here at Tim Hortons Field on Saturday at 7 p.m. If not, you can stream it on One Soccer. And don't forget, this is the last episode of Forge Daily this week, but tomorrow you can expect another episode of Max Access with Noah Jensen. So stay tuned, and we'll be back with Forge Daily on Monday.
This has been Forge Daily with Mackenzie Barwell. If you like what you heard, please like, follow, subscribe, comment, and share.